Imagine arriving at work on a normal Tuesday morning. You grab your coffee, exchange a few words with coworkers, check your phone one last time before your shift begins. Nothing feels unusual. Nothing feels dangerous. But at approximately 7:15 a.m. on May 26, 2026, inside a paper mill in Longview, Washington, something catastrophic happened. A giant industrial tank containing nearly 900,000 gallons of highly caustic chemicals suddenly failed. Within seconds, steel twisted apart. Chemical liquid exploded across the facility. Buildings shook. Workers were thrown to the ground, and an ordinary workday instantly became one of the deadliest industrial disasters in modern Washington state history. Authorities would later confirm that 11 workers lost their lives in the catastrophe. This is the story of the Washington chemical disaster, a tragedy that left families devastated, investigators searching for answers, and an entire community asking the same question: how could something like this happen? Longview is a city built on industry. Located along the Columbia River, its economy has been tied to timber, paper production, and manufacturing for generations. Massive industrial facilities dominate parts of the landscape, providing thousands of jobs and supporting local communities for decades. Among those facilities was the paper mill operated by Nippon Dynawave Packaging. For workers there, handling industrial chemicals was simply part of everyday life. One of the most important chemicals used in the papermaking process is known as white liquor. Despite its harmless-sounding name, white liquor is anything but harmless. It is a highly corrosive mixture, primarily containing sodium hydroxide and sodium sulfide. The chemical plays a critical role in breaking down wood into pulp during paper production. Under controlled conditions, it can be handled safely, but in large quantities, it becomes extremely dangerous. And on that morning, there was an enormous amount of it. The storage tank involved in the disaster contained roughly 900,000 gallons of white liquor. That is enough liquid to fill more than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. As employees prepared for a shift change, many workers were gathered in common work areas. Then, without warning, disaster struck. Witnesses described a sudden and violent failure. Officials later said the tank imploded or ruptured, releasing a massive volume of caustic liquid across the site. The force of the failure damaged nearby structures and created a scene of total chaos. People began running. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the facility. Some workers suffered chemical burns. Others were injured by debris and collapsing structures. Visibility in parts of the plant became limited as emergency crews rushed toward a situation that was still unfolding. For those closest to the tank, there was little time to react. The sheer volume of chemical liquid released into the area created an extremely hazardous environment. Emergency responders quickly realized this was not going to be a standard rescue operation. It was becoming a recovery mission. Within hours, authorities confirmed fatalities. Several injured workers were transported to hospitals, but an even more frightening reality soon emerged. 9 workers were still missing. Search teams faced an almost impossible challenge. The damaged tank remained unstable. Hazardous chemicals covered portions of the facility. Structural debris blocked access to critical areas, and every movement inside the site carried significant risk. Officials had to balance speed with safety. Families desperately waited for news. Co-workers gathered outside, hoping for miracles. But as hours turned into days, hope began to fade. Search teams used heavy equipment to remove debris. Drones were flown over parts of the facility to assist recovery efforts. Specialized hazmat crews monitored chemical contamination while investigators worked to map the destruction left behind. The operation was slow, painfully slow, not because responders lacked urgency, but because every section of the site had to be secured before crews could safely enter.
Even recovered victims reportedly had to undergo decontamination procedures before being transported from the scene. For Longview residents, each passing day brought another wave of anxiety. Questions spread rapidly across social media. Was the community in danger? Had toxic chemicals entered the environment? Could drinking water become contaminated? Officials worked quickly to answer those concerns. Tests confirmed that some contamination reached the nearby Columbia River. However, authorities repeatedly stated that they found no evidence of harmful impacts to local drinking water supplies or air quality. Environmental monitoring continued while cleanup efforts remained underway. As recovery operations continued, the human cost of the disaster became increasingly clear. The missing workers were not just names on a list. They were fathers, brothers, friends, co-workers, people who had shown up for work expecting to return home that evening. One particularly heartbreaking detail emerged when reports revealed that two brothers were among the victims. The tragedy devastated multiple families across the region and triggered an outpouring of support from the community. Days after the rupture, authorities finally delivered the news everyone had feared. All 9 missing workers had been located. The final death toll stood at 11. The disaster instantly became one of the deadliest workplace accidents in Washington's modern history. But even after the recovery effort ended, another challenge remained: finding out why. Industrial tanks do not simply collapse without a reason. Investigators began examining every possible factor. Was there a structural defect? Had corrosion weakened the tank over time? Did a maintenance failure play a role? Was there an operational issue nobody had noticed? At the time of this video, investigators have not yet announced a final cause. Multiple agencies continue examining evidence from the scene in an effort to understand exactly what triggered the catastrophic failure. And that answer matters, because every major industrial disaster leaves behind lessons written in tragedy. The goal of every investigation is to ensure those lessons prevent future deaths. History has shown that industrial facilities can become incredibly dangerous when equipment fails unexpectedly. Whether it's a refinery explosion, a mine collapse, a chemical release, or a structural failure, the pattern is often the same. Workers trust that the systems around them are safe. Then a single point of failure changes everything. For the families affected by the Longview disaster, the investigation is about more than technical findings. It is about accountability. It is about understanding why their loved ones never came home. And it is about making sure another family never receives the same devastating phone call. Today, the twisted remains of that chemical tank serve as a reminder of how quickly disaster can strike. One moment, workers were beginning another routine day. The next, an entire community was facing unimaginable loss. 11 lives were lost, dozens of families were forever changed, and one ordinary Tuesday morning became a tragedy that Washington will remember for years to come.